Welcome back to another week of the stream here with Blockchain Sosa. Just jump right into these topics for today. First topic for today's stream, the SEC ruling. So for those of y'all that haven't been keeping up, on I think Monday, a report came out stating that the SEC had asked Coinbase, which is one of the largest crypto providers in the United States. It is not the largest, Binance is the largest, but it asked Coinbase to halt all crypto activity, with the exception of Bitcoin, right? And basically, Coinbase said that they're not doing this, and I don't blame them because they make a lot of money off of different fees from people just going in and saying like, yo, I'm buying this coin, I'm buying this coin when a new coin drops. So I don't blame them for not going ahead and doing that. Kind of the premise of it and why the SEC told them to stop doing this is that they basically said, and let me pull up the article so I can give a little bit of context here. So the SEC basically told Coinbase that all crypto outside of Bitcoin is basically a security. And I think basically there needs to be certain regulations on securities put in place by the SEC in order for you to basically trade or use it according to like whatever the US economy laws is. It's interesting because when you think of crypto, you could think of it in two ways. You can think of it one as the technology, you could think of it two as a currency. So for the SEC to call it a security is very interesting, right? I think the same thing can be said for like housing, right? Like, do we look at housing as a security? I understand like housing isn't digital and it isn't in a digital format in the same way that like money or fiat currency can be. But I think it's, it all depends on like how one is looking at crypto, right? So kind of let's just dive into it. So SEC asked Coinbase to delist every currency except Bitcoin. And then from there, they went ahead and decided to sue the exchange, which is crazy. You have a federal agency suing private or a public company, right? Yeah, because Coinbase is public, suing a public company. So that's insane, to say the least. And then from there, basically, the CEO of Coinbase, I think his name is Armstrong, right? Yeah. Or Brian Armstrong? Yeah, Brian Armstrong. Basically said, yo, we taking it to trial. Like, we are not playing this. We're taking this to trial. Like Young Thug said, free Young Thug. But basically, yeah, he said, like, that isn't fair. And I kind of am on his side, right? And I don't think it's fair because Coinbase is kind of like, at least from an outsider looking in, right? From day one has gone to the SEC and said, hey, we're trying to bring crypto adoption to the US public in a safe way, right? So like, why not like work with them, right? Like, why not continue to work with Coinbase internally instead of creating all this public turmoil and suing the exchange? Like, why not listen to like what they have to say and what they're bringing to the table, To a degree, it's kind of like, what is their motive here, right? Like, are they trying to devalue cryptocurrency because it allows people to change different wealth classes, I feel like there's a lot of different theories that can go on from why they're doing this, but it's definitely interesting, right? So kind of diving more into this article, yeah, so the SEC staff does not ask companies to delist crypto assets. That's kind of what the SEC is claiming. They're trying to like CYA basically, and which is not true because we saw what they did recently with Ripple in terms of that litigation. I think that litigation took like 3 years and then Ripple actually won that case. So I think it's smart for Coinbase to basically go ahead and say like, no, we're not doing this, because obviously like if they went and delisted it, that'll kill their company. They have investors, they have a board of trustees that they need to report up to and be like, hey, like we're making this amount of money. And then also like, I'm sure like their board is like, just take this to trial, man. Like, we're making X amount of dollars. I don't know how much they're making. I'm definitely sure they're making billions. Maybe they're not profitable, but at least they're collecting like, maybe I would say like hundreds of millions in fees every year, probably. So they sure do have the money to go to trial. Like, they more than likely have the money to go to trial. So I think we'll see what happens. Kind of like they mentioned in this article, Coinbase and the SEC are now like in the legal process. Like I mentioned earlier, Ripple scored a really big victory against the SEC pretty much. And it was ruled that Ripple isn't a token, but I think this is a whole different ballgame, right? Because Coinbase, I don't think Coinbase, they're not fighting against necessarily their token. They're fighting against an entire exchange and basically a marketplace that people like me and you can go ahead and buy this crypto. So it's going to be interesting to see, to say the least, for sure. So kind of with that, you know, a lot of these things happen all the time. Last year, there was this big thing like, oh, Coinbase is going bankrupt. Coinbase is going to go out of business. This is all smoke, man. Just stay focused. You know, like if you know what your goals are, like you were trying to make 10K, 20K, 30K, just stay focused, keep up with the news and move accordingly, right? Don't really be particularly concerned about kind of like what's going on a day to day. Like if the ruling does come out in a year or 2 years, like, hey, Coinbase has to shut it down, we find another exchange to do our business, or you can use DeFi, which, you know, is a whole different ball game. So with that being said, kind of some big takeaways from this before we move on to the next topic. If you do have your coins on an exchange, please take them off of an exchange. Go ahead and get yourself a hardware wallet. Something as simple as this. I know like there has been all this like controversy recently with Ledger, but go ahead and get yourself a Ledger or whatever you feel is the most safest for you. That is not an ad. They're not paying me for that. So go ahead and get you a Ledger and move your crypto off of an exchange. I think, you know, if you do kind of want to have some crypto on an exchange, what I like to do, I like to kind of have it like in this three tier hierarchy. So basically, you know, keep most of your crypto offline on a cold wallet. From there, keep some on a hot wallet, such as like an app on your phone, like a MetaMask, for example, or whatever. And then keep a very, very small percentage on a crypto exchange. For me, that exchange of choice is Coinbase. Once again, this is not an ad. So, but, you know, like I said, just make sure crypto that you're not okay with losing, please make sure to take it off the exchanges. Second point to this, definitely go and start, if you haven't done so already, start looking into DeFi. I think I'm definitely going to probably put together a video on what is DeFi and how to get into it, and just basically like how you can control your own finances, basically decentralized finance. And then from there, you know, just kind of see what happens with this Coinbase thing. But I think for me personally, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I've been using Coinbase for some time now, and yeah, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So yeah, on that note, I think let's jump into the next topic. So this topic here is definitely super interesting. When I got the news yesterday, I was like, what is going on? But pretty much it's called Fitch. Yeah, so pretty much Fitch, who's a credit rating agency, downgraded the United States from, I think, a AAA to a AA+. And I was shocked because I think the last time that the credit rating for the United States was downgraded was in 2011. Previous debt ceiling, 2011. It went down a notch for a few days after the debt ceiling deal. So when I think back to 2011, we were coming out of the wake of the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, 2010. Things were starting to like stabilize a little bit and go back on the up and up. There was a lot of spending being spent by the U.S. government. And it's interesting because, like, you know, S&P, who is another credit rating agency, has had us at an A++ according to this article since 2011, when Fitch started looking at this. But supposedly Fitch is the highest rated credit agency that basically a lot of other foreign markets respect. So for us to kind of like go down to AA rating, A+ rating is a little concerning. Let's see, so what other countries have a AA+ rating for Fitch? And let's kind of look at it, right? So basically, the other economies that have a AAA rating right now is Canada. I don't understand how, because they definitely, feeling some turmoil there. Germany kind of makes sense. Denmark, Netherlands makes sense. Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, Luxembourg. Singapore definitely makes sense. Singapore is a place I want to go to. I've never been to Singapore, but I've heard like nothing but good things about Singapore. So that definitely makes sense as well. But yeah, I did not expect to see this. The last time we were in a credit watch, if I believe, I don't think Bitcoin was a thing. Excuse me. So Bitcoin was a thing, but the price of one Bitcoin was 009, right? So if we're looking at the charts all time, the last time, so when the US had or was on AA watch, pretty much, AA plus watch rather, Bitcoin was sitting at like $4, $5, right? So that rating really didn't have too much of a pull on Bitcoin, right? Because it was still in its infancy. So it didn't really affect Bitcoin too much at that time. However, now, like Bitcoin kind of plays a role in our financial markets, right? I wouldn't say it plays as much as a role as let's say that of like the stock market or things that are being traded on the stock market, but there's a lot of people invested in Bitcoin, right? Or that hold Bitcoin rather. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens. Um, what I noticed from the stock market today, there has been like a couple of there's been different stocks that have been went down because of this news. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Bitcoin. I think personally, and this is my personal prediction, I think, Bitcoin is just going to kind of stay sideways until something happens with the stock market, right? I don't, this credit rating could have been priced in, right? We had all these issues with kind of getting like the debt ceiling increase and things like that, which is why I think we lost our rating. Pretty much, like how much debt we can take on has increased versus like how much we're making as a government from like taxes and all that stuff. So I don't know if it's going to necessarily have that much of an impact on Bitcoin. I think the thing to think about here, the thing to keep in mind is if you do see the dollar becoming less and less valuable, that has a very positive impact on Bitcoin, right? The same way real estate does, right? Let's say the dollar continues to get weakened and weakened. People love to hedge with real estate, right? Real estate is a hedge against inflation. So I think Bitcoin can start to, or crypto as a whole, can start to assume that role as well, where it's a hedge against a dollar that's being weakened. Kind of on this topic, it'll be interesting to see what happens with crypto. Usually, like when things like this happen, crypto is usually affected like that. So we'll see what happens with the market, like the stock market throughout the rest of this week. It's interesting because this is starting to become like a tumbleweed that's slowly tumbling, collecting more weeds and dust that's just going down the hill or down the road rather. And, we have a couple of other pivotal events coming up, right? Like we have student loans restarting in September. We're only a month away from that. So we'll see what happens, especially with like a lot of earnings calls this week. So we'll see what happens. But I think this is something I did want to point out just to keep all of y'all, in the know of what's going on with the credit ratings. Like I said, once again, I don't know if this is necessarily going to affect crypto in the ways that it may affect the stock market, but we'll see. So I think let's kind of segue into some more positive news. On a positive note, today, Litecoin officially went through its halving. For those of you guys that know, Litecoin was basically built as a clone or copy off of Bitcoin, not like necessarily one-to-one. So don't click me and say that, oh, I'm saying Litecoin is a direct copy of Bitcoin, because it's not. Let's be honest, it's not. But they do share some similar characteristics. So Litecoin officially had their halving today. Usually, with these halvings, we usually see positive things happening after these halvings. But according to this article put together by CoinDesk, Litecoin after this halving hit its monthly low today, right? And while it's not that far off, I think two things kind of play a part in here too, right? Like we've seen the turmoil that's going on in the stock market. So I don't think it's necessarily just the halving that's causing this, but kind of when halvings do happen, the rewards for mining, at least in Litecoin's case, gets cut in half, right? As kind of has been being explained here. So what that means is that it's not as profitable to mine Litecoin. And essentially what that means is the amount of Litecoin that becomes available gets reduced, right? So it's making Litecoin more scarce. Once upon a time, I believed in Litecoin. Now, I just use Litecoin for a transaction, right? Like, let's say I need to move things between exchanges. That is my use for Litecoin. I don't think that you should be accumulating Litecoin, for those of you that are accumulating Litecoin, as a store, a hedge of like, yo, this is going to make me rich. I think, if you're looking at that, or you're looking at a store of like, how can I save some money? Obviously, all this carries risk. Stick to your Bitcoins, stick to your Ethereum. Litecoin, like I said, the transaction fees are kind of the reason why I still even use Litecoin today. For those of you that are just jumping into crypto, so the Litecoin founders, this is the reason why I basically stopped using Litecoin. I sold all my Litecoin. The founder of Litecoin basically sold all of his Litecoin. And he said it's to remove a conflict of interest. In my opinion, so the founder of Ethereum holds Ethereum still, if I'm not mistaken. Vitalik, I'm pretty sure he holds Ethereum. So he holds over 286,000 Ethereum, which at today's price, for the sake of multiplication, we'll say it's 1,700. He owns basically almost $486 million worth of Ethereum. He hasn't sold. So why is it that one of the founders, because for a conflict of interest, said in December 2017, he is going to sell all of his Litecoin? So let's put it like this. He sold his Litecoin, but what did he put that money into? Like where did he go with that money, right? And I think that's why, for me personally, I'm not that bullish on Litecoin, right? So like I said, this is not me saying that Litecoin is bad. I use Litecoin for various transactions, especially when I need to move money across different exchanges or to different services or to like purchase certain things. I like to use Litecoin because of the very low fees and the fast transactions that they have. However, like I said, if you are in Litecoin, kind of be cautious that the founder sold all of his coins in 2017. It said he donated, but I don't believe that, so we'll see. So kind of going back to the Litecoin halving, pretty much, let's kind of see what the article says here. Litecoin halving cycles versus Bitcoin halving cycles. So they're showing Litecoin halving as this orange line here, and they're showing the Litecoin price. And they're basically saying when these halvings happen, you kind of usually see a dip. So I guess we'll see a dip with Litecoin. You don't necessarily see the same type of patterns like with Bitcoin where you see like an increase. Next topic that I did want to touch on, Binance. The US is suing Binance, and I don't know how I feel about that, right? I really don't know how I feel about the US suing Binance. I think we saw what happened with FTX, and that makes sense, kind of as to why they want to put some laws or rulings into place. But Binance kind of really like kicked a lot of this off, right? Like it's a global exchange that allowed people to move money around. And I'm not saying that they may have necessarily had everyone's best interest in mind, but it was definitely interesting to see like Binance and how it took off, and then the US kind of stepping in and saying, certain states stepping in and saying, hold on, we don't trust this and we're not sure what this is. You can't use Binance here. And I remember strictly a point in time where you had to move all of your crypto from Binance.com to Binance.us. And then certain states was like, we're not even gonna allow you to use Binance.us in our state. So you have to go from Binance.us to like one of these exchanges, such as like FTX or like a crypto.com or a Coinbase. And I remember that specifically. So I don't know if they're going to be able to really sue Binance per se. I think we've seen certain things where the certain governments, right, went ahead and just kind of like banned Bitcoin as a whole or banned Binance as a whole, but then reversed those policies. So I think that's kind of what we may see going on here, especially with Binance. Like, they may just be forced to kind of like comply and work with the U.S. in terms of like putting regulations in place. But we'll ultimately see what happens. I think all of this is kind of like dust, right, or smoke in the air, kind of like slow down crypto a little bit and just slow down different industries, right? They're actively slowing down the housing market, right? They're actively slowing down car buying and things like that. And not necessarily telling you not to buy a house or not to buy a car, but just making it more difficult for people to get into it so that we're not seeing these inflated prices for the next like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, right? And I think like, how do you slow down crypto? You start doing all these different suing exchanges and pretty much enacting all these different laws or forcing these different laws to be enacted, right? That's your way of slowing it down and kind of making big negative press on all these things. So we'll see what happens here. I don't think, it's going to go anywhere, but we'll see what happens for sure. So last topic on the crypto end that I kind of wanted to dive into for today. There is a new coin called Bald. So, okay, over the last weekend, the lower of meme coin fortunes and a star of the market helped Coinbase new layer 2 base, blockchain base attract. So Coinbase is rolling out layer 2 tokens now. Interesting. Attract over 70 million ETH and over 200 million in trading volumes. Traders flock to purchase Ball, which has jumped to 85 million market. Interesting. On Monday, Ball developers started removing millions of dollars in liquidity from the token's trading pair in a sudden and unannounced move. So it doesn't sound like Ball is decentralized. Keep that in mind. This left holders in a lurch and causing prices to surge more than 90%. Interesting, because that means they are actively affecting the price of Ball token. Actively, which is funny because we all get into crypto because we like decentralized. We don't like certain parties putting their hands in the pot and saying, let me manipulate prices, even though it does happen across other coins. Yeah, Bald basically is built by the crypto exchange. Wow, interesting. On a stack, and it was open to builders in mid-July. So basically, Coinbase started its own crypto application on a layer 2. The easiest way to explain it is you have a chain and then you have apps that are built on top of those chains and those sit on the layer 2. So it's interesting to see what happens there, right? Basically, people are saying that Bankman-Friedman, who is the FTX founder, so Sam, him, who basically scammed a whole bunch of people out of money through FTX US and was facing a bunch of indictments, was able to kind of get out of jail, and he's now investing in this thing called the Bald token. And there's basically this uproar that he's connected to Bald token. Now, I don't like to push conspiracy theories. I'd rather kind of wait for the information to come out. I'm sure they're going to dive into it, but even Elon tweeted a sigh and saying like, damn, this is going to be another rug. Like, he's basically trying to get his money up again and then pull the rug out from underneath everyone. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. A part of me wants to say he is on the righteous path now and wants to right all of his wrongs. But at the same time, like, just look at that face, man. Like, it looks very sinister. Like, he just looks like a sinister person. And it's hard for me to kind of get behind this ball token when this is built like on Coinbase. So it's already not decentralized, and it kind of doesn't follow the rules of like crypto and why we all got into it. And two, like if Bankman Fried, whatever his name is, Bankman Fried is behind this, do we actually want to invest in this, man? I say no. My gut says no. My gut says stay away from it. This is just another like quick pump and dump scheme as we've seen in crypto. But that's what my gut says. Kind of stay away from it. Don't really buy into it. Just kind of like leave it alone. But let me know what y'all think. I'm a little nervous about this one. If you're into like shorting crypto, this will probably be a good coin to short. That's at least what I think, right? Kind of like just wait for it to run up and then go ahead and short it. Like I said, look at this 6 hours ago. Like it already lost 96% of its volume, you know? So it's like, why even touch something like this? Why would you want to touch a crypto like this that's already lost 96% of its trade volume? I guess we could kind of segue into this next topic with Curve. So basically, Curve had an attack where pretty much it was like, for those of you that aren't in crypto, I kind of equate it to like a bank run almost, but I wouldn't even say that. But they had an attack. So yeah, somebody tried to steal $70 million worth of Curve token. And it's interesting because 2 years ago, I used Curve in terms of just doing different like liquidity pools, right? And what a liquidity pool is, you can say like, hey, I have this much amount of crypto. I'm not using it for anything. I'm not spending on anything. Let me put it into this pool to help, make transactions faster on certain exchanges and things like that. And because of that, you get a reward, right? Saying like, hey, here's some money back, or here's a percentage back for helping strengthen the networks and make things faster, right? So that is basically liquidity pools. You guys can look it up. And I guess from one of these liquidity pools, 70 million was stolen. I forgot, they had like a thing in place pretty much that reversed it. Yeah, so basically their threat protection kicked in, right? And it's interesting because for those of you that are interested in crypto, I think this is a good place to look at. Look into security for crypto. And what I mean by that is how to prevent attacks like this from happening, right? I feel like that's going to be a very lucrative place in the future. And then also like crypto insurance is also going to be lucrative. I think it'll be interesting to see what companies or teams start kind of like helping with these different attacks, right? Yeah, so that's kind of the big things for crypto this week. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure you tune in to our weekly show live every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. on Twitch.